Welcome to It's No Secret, a podcast for Kiwis who want their money questions answered.
Ready, steady, go.
This podcast will answer the money questions you may or may not have on your mind. We'll talk to real Kiwis and share truths about our own financial lives.
Both the successes and the failures. Because the truth is, there is no secret to achieving financial freedom. Hello and welcome to It's No Secret. I'm Kat.
And I'm Christine.
And on today's episode of the podcast, we are tackling the question of how do we justify the cost of investing in ourselves? Should you always put yourself first when it comes to your finances? Society tells us to invest in tangible assets and be selfless, that generosity for others is a quality to be admired. But what about generosity for ourselves? We are also conditioned to not show our wealth or be flashy, and that spending on oneself can be indulgent and unnecessary. So what does investing in yourself really mean? Is it buying a new handbag, enrolling in university, spending money on new adventures? We think that it can be all of that and more. And we're really going to dive into this today, I guess, around, what investing in yourself really means, but also why it's important and how we can reframe it. And of course, as we always do, share a couple of insights of our own, how we're doing this at the moment. Because really, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your physical or mental health, will you be able to enjoy it? Now, Christine, this is a topic that we've touched on before and we always get feedback on because people love it. I think it really strikes a chord. Everyone knows the struggle of wanting to give to others, but then also not wanting to give from an empty cup and making sure that they also prioritize themselves, but that challenge of doing that versus feeling a little bit selfish. So to start, can you explain what investing in yourself means to you? And then let us know what that looks like for you right now.
Yeah, sure. So investing in yourself means, what that means to me is just taking the time to, or it could be even giving time to yourself, but really prioritizing you before anyone or anything else. And so that can look like lots of different things like you've just touched on. But for me personally, what that looks like is things like I really like massages.
Doesn't everyone?
Yeah, exactly. But also personal development. So that is coaching and therapy and things like that. So at the moment I am about to start a coaching program tomorrow actually. And I just
exciting.
made a lump sum payment last night and that was terrifying.
Oh, okay. So this is a well-timed topic for you because you've literally just drained, I'm guessing, some of your savings.
Yeah, I halved it.
Good.
It was terrifying.
And how are you feeling?
I actually feel weirdly okay about it. Like, I think I had built up in my head for, I think it's been about 2 months now that I could have paid it. And now having seen that money go out of my bank account, I'm like, money comes and goes. I can just build it up again over time. And yes, it was a lump sum payment and a decent amount, but it's okay because I know that that's going to pay dividends in the future.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but there is such a mindset piece around it of like, how do we justify the cost, right? Because it can feel like so unnecessary and so lavish. But I really don't think it is because, as we'll touch on later, we are our greatest asset. And if we're not investing into ourselves, then, it's just probably not the best thing for our future. But also to build on what it means for me is I think physical health. Yeah, I also invest in Be Pure, which is it's a health programs because I would love to be my optimal health. And that isn't just kind of like, day to day feeling okay. I want to feel really strong and healthy because as you said before, if we don't have our physical health or our mental health, what do we have? What about you, Kat? What does it look like for Kat?
Good question. So, I totally agree with all of those statements in terms of what I guess investing in yourself means. And for me, I'm definitely taking the approach of investing in like physical well-being, but also mental well-being. And, on the physical well-being side, I had noted down here things like, having really good vitamins, which is similar, I guess, in some respects to the Be Pure program, but then also maintaining my gym membership. That's something that I've always found really easy to do. Like, people, I go to F45 and a lot of people could look at F45 and say, hey, that's actually quite expensive. And I totally agree, it is. But the reality is I know how much benefit my overall life gets and my basic sanity gets from me going to the gym. So that one for me is really easy. Where I found a little bit harder is investing in things like looking really good so I feel really good, because I think that is something that it's easy to think that you're being really vain and in that respect. And so one thing that I have done recently is go to an amazing place, which I'm going to give a shout out to because I love them. And that's the Face Place here in Auckland. And, go through getting basically skin consults, making sure that like my skin's really healthy. I, funnily enough, started doing this after I had my miscarriage because my hormones were all over the show and I looked and felt terrible. And that was the trigger point for me to go and do it. But realistically, I should have done it ages ago because, like how you look directly impacts how you feel and your confidence levels and all sorts of different things. So having great skincare, taking the right vitamins, going to the gym, and then the mental wellbeing side for me is really around, committing to using a certain amount of our savings to invest in therapy and things that I think are good for my mental health. One of the other ones that I guess I've also been sitting on that I haven't committed to yet would be around upskilling myself for like work and my job, but not so much in the sense of like doing further education, more around, working with mentors or business coaches, that sort of thing. And I haven't committed to anything there. Probably, I think if I said to myself, it would be because I haven't found the right fit. But I think realistically, I've been put off by the cost, if I'm really honest. And so trying to, I guess, work through that at the moment and look at what a good option or like the best option could look like for me in terms of, is that an individual that I really connect with and I want to pay them for their time? Is it a course? Is it being part of a group, say like the Coal of Women, where you can have a membership to access a whole range of different people and go to different events? I'm not really sure on that one. But that leads really nicely into my second question for you, which is like, how long do you sit on those decisions, right? Because that's me sitting on that decision for probably, I would say, at least 6 months now. And I have a feeling I'm probably going to sit on it for a while longer. And it's like, why? Why am I sitting on that decision for so long? So I know with your personal development courses, you did sit on that for quite a while, right?
Yeah. So the first one that I did this year, I probably sat on it for about 6 months. And I'd been following the person for quite a while, but just really couldn't justify that expense. And yeah, the first one was about $2,500. So it's not exactly cheap. And I think it is to the second point that you made about the business mentor or coach. It is it's really hard to justify that cost because, and I think you'll touch on this later, but you don't see the immediate value that you get because it's soft skills that you're working on, right? And it shifts in other ways that also like you might not see but others might see in you. So I would say that that's probably a big one. But then this decision, as I said, I was pretty quick to make it for this coaching course, but actually paying the money is another thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think you made the decision faster because you made like a small step and then it was way easier to make like the bigger step because you were already like on the journey?
Oh, totally. It is. You kind of get a taste of what the change could be, or you make small changes and then you start to think, well, what would happen if I really invested a large amount? Would I be able to step change into something bigger and like level up?
Yeah, like I've seen the change from the small decision. So actually now I can kind of picture what this larger change will be or the outcome will be from making an even bigger leap forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also applies to things like skincare, right? So I've also done a little bit of skincare recently and seeing the difference that it's made in my skin has been huge. And I've never had skin this nice or even like paid for products this expensive, but it just really does show you the value of having high quality skincare to then
which
have
is
that
exactly how I feel. Yeah, definitely. And I think for me with that one, like it was a realization of I needed new skincare because I'd run out of stuff in my bathroom. And then I was looking at like, different brands just to buy off the counter, like over the counter, and coming to the realization as I'm like trawling Mecca and adding things to my cart that this is all really expensive anyway. Like none of it is cheap. There's not really an inexpensive skincare when it comes to, properly looking after your skin. And so then I was like, well, hold on a second. This is basically the same as what I would get if I went and actually sought like a professional's view and opinion and talked to them about the various different things that they offered. And thankfully we know someone that works at the Face Place, and she was like, look, just go and give it a try. And I'm so glad that I did, because exactly like you, now I'm a total convert. And I'm like, I love, like, you know, it sounds so ridiculous, but cleaning my face every night and using all skincare, and I feel so good about it. And I'm like, why did I sit on this for so long? Now that I can see the results, it's like, oh my goodness. And I think it is one of those things of like, almost to your detriment, you sit on it for so long that I wonder, like, is the negative impact of you delaying the decision more costly than if you had just committed the money in the first place earlier?
Yeah. I really think it depends on what the cost is, but I can absolutely see how that would be larger than not doing it. So if it was something like you were stuck in an old pattern where you were, I don't know, got angry easily or something, let's say from the personal development side, what is the cost of you upsetting everyone around you very quickly all the time versus actually getting help to change that habit and quote unquote be a better person, or like be a little bit more calm or things like that, because I feel like that will trickle into everything. But it's the same like with the skincare, it's the confidence piece, right? And it's the going to the gym and things like that. When you are more confident in your face and your body, you're going to, you know, project that energy. And I feel like that will trickle through into everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I was thinking on with that is with, say, this whole business mentoring coach thing and me at the moment, I'm like, I'm doing my job fine. Like, I'm not failing at my job.
Hey, you're doing your job great, Kat. I don't know what you're doing.
I'll reframe. I'm doing a great job at the moment. I'm doing really well. But I guess I am, like every human is well, maybe not every human, but most humans, I think, are acutely aware of where some of their shortcomings probably are, or the areas in their life that they feel like they're not doing so well. And let's say with my job specifically, I know that there's some things that will probably be quite a challenge for me in the next 12 months in terms of the type of work that we're doing. And so I want to surround myself with people that can support me in that regard. But it's like I am delaying making a decision on that because of the cost and almost the like thought burden, like the mental burden of having to think through it. And then let's say, you know, we get 3 months from now and I still haven't made a decision. It's like, well, what could I have actually gained in those 3 months if I just made the decision earlier and committed to something?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking how, like, well, is there an opportunity to kind of test the waters, or like one chunk of money that you can kind of allocate in your budget as you did with therapy for that type of thing, and then you give it a certain time frame, and you're like, okay, if this nothing has shifted for me in my life in that time.
True.
Or something like that.
And maybe I think that's a really good tip, in that, you know, is there a way that you can allocate a small amount, you know, monetarily or time, whatever it might be, that enables you to try something first, almost a bit of a like try before you buy, get, you know, as you said, the toe in the water and see a little bit of the impact that can happen, and then go forward and commit to more time or money into this this thing. Because, you know, as we've touched on, one of the reasons why it is so hard to spend money on ourselves is that we can't see the results immediately for most things. There's no instant gratification.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, one of the things Luke and I were talking about this episode, and he was like, it's like when I buy wine. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you know, if you add up all the little things in your life that you very easily spend money on, and let's say like quite a reasonable amount of money when it all adds up. So for him, that's wine. He was like, he could easily go to the supermarket and he's had a tough week. He's like, you know, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to buy a couple of bottles of wine for, you know, the next week, whatever it might be. And they're going to be, let's say, $35, $40 each. That's, to be fair, that's quite an expensive bottle of wine for us. But, you know, let's say they're $35. That's, you know, $70 every fortnight that you don't even think about or question. And the thing is he knows when he buys that and then he comes home, you know, you're going to crack open that bottle straight away and you're going to know whether or not it's good, and it's going to make you feel better, and you have all of the lovely endorphins that you get from that, and you feel wonderful. And it's like a really quick, you know, win and a hit of endorphins and feeling great. That's so easy to do, and we get a lot out of it in that moment. But then we don't have that same instant hit of feeling good when we say commit, as you just have, to paying all this money to do something in the future. And whilst, you might say you have this session tomorrow, you come out of that like first session for this program and you probably feel really good after that session, but you don't know in advance that you're going to feel like that. Whereas I think, Luke knows when he goes and buys a $40 bottle of wine, he's going to be feeling great. Yeah. When he's having dinner and, eating it with his steak, he'll be feeling fabulous about that. And it's that sense of like, we can't see what these results are going to be. It's hard, I think, to imagine what great future us looks like. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, I was just thinking that he had to try wine once before, right? Yeah. Like he had to have that beginner experience.
Yep.
At least once.
Exactly. And to continue with that analogy, you probably had to buy the $15 bottle and was like, oh, this is not so great, to then work up to knowing that he's aspiring to buying the $40 bottle so that, for special occasions or for something that he wants to just feel good about and get those endorphins. I think the other one worth mentioning on this that I thought was definitely relevant because it plays a lot into like the psychology of money is the whole idea of post-purchase dissonance. Do you know what this is? As an idea.
I feel like it's a marketing term that I've come across.
Yeah. Definitely is. Plays into a lot of like marketing strategy, right? So cognitive dissonance is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially relating to behavioral decisions. So how this plays out in sort of our real life is often when we make a purchase point or a decision point about something immediately post the fact, so post-purchase, we have possibly an instant sense of regret or questioning around why we did that thing. And a really easy example of this is when you go and buy a new car, and this is like well researched. So you go buy a new car, you've, considered the decision probably for quite a number of weeks. You choose your car, you drive it out of the lot, and then all of a sudden you see all of these people over the next couple of weeks driving the same car as you. So, we have a Ford Ranger. You start to notice every other Ford Ranger on the road. Is it because there's more Ford Rangers on the road? No, it's because your brain is seeking out information to reconfirm to you that you've made the right choice. It's trying to combat the cognitive dissonance that is naturally happening after your decision that's, causing some sense of like inconsistent thoughts or, concern. And it's seeking out external information to confirm to you that you've made the right decision. Now, that's quite easy to do when you buy a car. It's very hard to do when you go and drop $1,000 on skincare. Because I could see Christine looking fabulous or this like other lovely lady on the street looking fabulous, but I have no idea if she's bought the same skincare as me. That's also really hard to do with, say, therapy, because how do I know or go and seek out like other information to reconfirm to me? Even with the gym, right? You only get that when someone else says to you, wow, you look really good at the moment, And
That's
so it's like,
true.
How do you be aware that this is an actual phenomenon of how our brain works and set yourself up to have factors or pieces of information or confirmations after the fact that feed back to you to confirm that you've made the right decision? Any thoughts on that? It's like we almost need hype girls, right? So it's like tell your friends that, you say to me, Kat, I've made this decision to go and do this coaching course. And then I find out that your first session is tomorrow. So that then on like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I can text you every day and be like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you doing this coaching course. You're going to be the best version of you. This is so great. And you'll be like, I know what you're doing. But maybe that's what we need. We need that.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, I think you get that in some ways with coaching if you have a community around you because you're all kind of riding the bandwagon together. So maybe it is that piece about like finding an accountability buddy that also buys skincare, i.e. me and you. Yes. So then you can be like, oh my God, Kat, your skin looks so great today.
You're looking fabulous. This is very true. I think that is a great suggestion and it fits into accountability buddies and just having at least one other person that is maybe on the same kind of journey or, interested in the same kind of self-development, investing in yourself that you're also doing.
Yeah,
I think definitely good.
And you'll never know if you don't kind of speak about it. It is something I will say is a lot of people can feel ashamed about investing money in themselves when really a lot of the people around you probably want to do it. They're just not allowing themselves to do it, right? So it is same thing about just general money, is opening up a conversation around that, because you enable the people around you to do it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is very, very, very true, because I think I just was telling you about how much money I was spending on skincare and like looking good in myself, and then that started the conversation and I guess the thought process for you, and then it's a real like ripple on effect. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Now, I know that you touched on the whole, us understating our own value and being our greatest asset. So do you want to talk us through what does that kind of mean?
Yes, sure. So this is something that you've mentioned on previous podcasts, is that we are actually a $1 million asset ourselves. So the example that you used is, why are we so quick to insure our car or our contents or whatever else, but we're not willing to insure ourselves because we are our biggest asset. So if you take your lifetime earnings potential, that adds up to be a ton of money over time. And so you are really, really valuable. So it is kind of taking that moment to realize that you are worth investing in, because you're going to get back what you put in.
Heck yeah. Because I think about like your house as a comparison. Most people won't bat an eyelid to put a new lick of paint on like the walls of their bedroom to make their house better, or, upgrade a kitchen, whatever it might be. But then the idea of spending $1,000 to invest in your own, mental health or growth, you're like, oh, no, thank you.
Exactly.
But why shouldn't you invest in this asset? Because if you're already worth $1 million, why not make yourself worth more?
$2 million. Exactly.
The world's your oyster. There's no upper limit on your self-worth.
Exactly. No, I love this saying, and I think it's really has been key for me also to change my mindset around not feeling guilty about spending that money, because it is an investment just as much as buying a house is, or investing in shares or things like that. It's just a different kind of investment. It's really changing the way you think about it, more so
absolutely
continuing to regret it, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think as well, it is worthwhile mentioning, and we will definitely get into insurance on another topic in general, but, only 1 in 7 New Zealand households have income protection insurance to make sure that their income, so the value of you as an individual, is covered. And there's in total nearly 1 million households in NZ that would be vulnerable if they faced a long-term illness that stopped the major earner in the household from working. And I think that really highlights to me just how much of an issue this is, in that people understate their own value. They don't have an appreciation of the lifetime value of you as an individual, what you can contribute, what you can earn, and they're afraid to spend money and invest in themselves. Because for me, I know that Luke and I both have income protection insurance, and we would never consider cancelling that. That is, I guess, like for us, reframing it, you could look at it and think, oh, that is a cost, and it is a cost, but at the bare minimum for me, I'm like, that's the minimum amount I should at least invest in myself, because that's covering me. That's making sure that I can continue to earn what I'm earning should something happen to me.
That's such a good point, actually, is looking at those payments to your insurance as investing in yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if there's one thing you take away from this podcast, guys, it's like, at the bare minimum, go and invest in yourself and secure your incomes, because you are worth it.
Yes. I'm going to go do that.
Now, this is one that I really wanted to talk about in terms of, other things that we can do and reasons why we might struggle to invest in ourselves so much. And I love this example, and I'm hoping that this is going to be a bit of a lockdown challenge. And I don't think we've talked about this before, Christine, so you're going to have to jump on board with this one. But, maybe one of the challenges is that we're sometimes just a little bit cheap. So we've talked about this before, this whole idea of being cheap versus being frugal, and how do we make sure that we're not falling into like a cheap mindset, so that we do get on board with the idea of being able to spend money on ourselves and feeling confident about that. And We'll link to some of this in the show notes on the website, because there's a really good video where Ramit Sethi, who came up with this $100 challenge, talks through it on this YouTube video. So we'll link to that. But what I really love about some of the work that he's done is he has this thing called the $100 challenge. And I'm going to challenge all of our listeners to do this. So in the next 48 hours, we want you to spend $100 on something you love. And it cannot be spent on kids, pets, or charity. It has to be spent on you. It should be meaningful and it should make you think. Now, the $100 amount also needs to be meaningful for you. So for some people, that will be a meaningful amount of money. For others, particularly if you're a high income earner, that amount may need to increase. It might be $300, $500, $1,000. In the example that Ramit was talking about this with Tim Ferriss, he was like, Tim Ferriss's amount would have a lot more zeros than $100. And for him, he gave the example of his amount for this challenge is between sort of $3,000 and $5,000. So it needs to be, relevant to you, but also needs to be meaningful and really, really make you think about what you want to spend it on. So, Christine, with that in mind, do you know what your meaningful amount would be for you? And do you have any ideas or kind of instant thoughts that come to mind of what you would spend it on?
I feel like I've literally just spent this on myself.
Even better.
Yeah. I think I probably actually went above and beyond my meaningful amount. So a meaningful amount would probably be something like $400 to $500.
Yep.
Something like that. But I spent in the thousands so on the personal development course. But one thing I will say is that I really struggle to spend money on clothes. Like I really just do not like it. And I think it's because I find it really hard to justify the cost, and especially if you're going to buy one piece that's like 3 times as expensive as what you could get. You could get quantity over quality. So maybe that's something that I decide to invest in, is $400 and something nice to wear.
Yes.
What about you?
Good question. So I think my meaningful amount would be probably about the same. I think when I was originally thinking about this, I was like, $500 feels like a gut feel. But then realistically, I'm like, if I really wanted to push the boat out, I would probably try and increase it to like $800, because that for me, it's that balance between $500 I could quite easily spend, $800 starts to make me feel nervous, if that makes sense. And I think that's where you want to find that line of like, I really need to think about this. It's a little bit uncomfortable. And therefore it's then really meaningful to me as an individual and really makes you think, okay, what do I really value about wanting to spend on myself? And then in terms of what I would spend it on, great question. To be honest, I think it would probably be one of those things that I always like talk about but never actually do. And in my mind, I would love, but I also always tell myself is like a bit too bougie. So example, I'd spend $500 on booking into a day spa. That's one of those things I'm like, I would love that so much. But anytime I let myself think about doing something like that, I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. It's very expensive. Why would you do that? So I think it would be something like that. Or it might actually also be clothes, because as I think I talked on the show before about, I don't spend a ton of money on clothes and I tend to kind of be a bit ad hoc with that. Whereas if I was like, you know what, it's spring, let's get some color into your wardrobe, let's feel fabulous, look fabulous, go and actually buy, as you said, something that's really, really meaningful. The other one would be a handbag, but that would be more than $800.
Yeah.
So yes, but that would be meaningful for me. I would love that forever and a day. So yeah.
I just want to pause for a second, because I was thinking when you were saying that you can't spend this on kids, pets or charities, and I think there's like a question to be asked around whether giving to other people is giving to yourself, because I think a lot of people can feel guilty often, or like, that's where you derive a lot of joy is by giving to others, and kind of whether that's in time or with dollars. Do you think there's a balance to find there? Like, are we talking about investing in yourself, only in yourself, or can you do that through giving to others?
That's such a tricky one. I think that it's easier to default to giving to others. So in the, situation of kids, a lot easier to go and spend money on your children, or even like family members, because, there's a lot of psychology around the fact that we feel really good doing that. And also, going back to what we talked about in the intro of this podcast, we're conditioned in society to think that we should give to others. It's a really good thing. It's an admirable quality to give time, give money, be selfless, all of those sorts of things. I would say, though, it's like, where's the line between becoming a giving martyr and you're like, oh God, and never really investing in yourself, and I think that's what's so nice about this challenge is it's like that money has to be spent on you. And I guess it's designed to really make you think around, well, how comfortable are you spending a meaningful amount of money on yourself where there's no benefit to anyone else but you? And if that is something that makes you quite uncomfortable, then that's a feeling worth looking at and thinking about, right? Because it's like, why does that make you feel uncomfortable? What kind of guilt are you harboring there? Is this something that, you've kind of been conditioned into? Is it not your natural stance? Do you just accept lots of things from other people? One thing on that, though, and interested to hear about maybe the difference between you and Ollie, because you're obviously going down this journey of investing a lot in yourself and being very aware of what you want to do. And it's like, well, there are other people that are 100% not on that page. For you guys, do you find like, is Ollie on an investing in himself bandwagon like you are?
No. Yeah.
Does he need the $100 challenge?
Yes, he does actually. And I think I'm going to go tell him after this.
Good.
Yeah. So I'm definitely way more pro investing in myself. And I think he would like to do more of it, but he's just a little bit cheap. I'm just going to say that. Sorry, Ollie.
Sorry, Ollie.
And so I'm slowly molding him to invest in himself more, because I think as I do it, he can see the value that I get out of it. And with something like personal development, it is those soft skills, right? And having an external person see the changes in you and how it directly impacts him, it's kind of slowly shaping his perception of it. But the classic thing is like clothes. He doesn't buy them very often because he doesn't want to, which is his own, he's allowed to do that. But, I guess I'm really like, I can see that he wants it. So I'm like, go buy it because it'll make you happy.
Yes.
But then in some ways, it also, on the flip side, creates a bit of an imbalance, because if I'm over here spending huge chunks of money and he's saving it all, then if we've got collective goals that we're working towards, then maybe he'll get there first and I'll need to play a little catch up because I've decided to invest this money now. So it can create some uneven
a bit of tension.
Goals.
Yeah, I that's a very important point to make, because I think, thinking about when you're also undertaking this kind of investing in yourself journey with a partner, I think about Luke, and he is very supportive of me investing in myself in the way that I am. But then it makes it a little bit harder because I start to feel guilty about the fact that I've spent, let's say, for example, $1,000 in the last couple of months on things that I want to do for myself. And I'm like, well, has he spent $1,000 on himself? Do I need to encourage him to go and do that? How I feel bad. This is an unequal, and I really highly value fairness. How do we make this fair? And that can then also play into whether or not you, as the person that's doing the activities, actually wants to do that, because you're like, oh gosh, well, if I'm spending all this money, what about them?
Yeah, exactly. I think also that there's a key distinction to make in that if you have your money together versus separately. So him and I obviously don't have our money together, and so it could be very easy for me to spend, not have any money left at the end of the day, and he would have no idea. Whereas I guess on your side, you've got the shared money, so you're trying to think, how do I make this fair? We're not at that stage yet, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And I do remember there was probably a couple of months ago when I first went to one of the face appointments, and I kind of splashed out a little bit. Zero regrets about that. But I told Luke that I was going to do this, and I didn't know how much I was going to spend. I didn't know how much the appointment would cost and kind of what products I would end up buying and rah, rah, rah. So anyway, get to the end of the appointment and I was like, cool, I'm committed. I don't really care what the cost is. I'm past that point of caring. I'm just going to pay for it all. And then 2 weeks later, we were out for dinner and he was like, oh yeah, that thing that you did was actually really expensive. And it wasn't that and I felt terrible. And it wasn't that he was mad about it or concerned about it. He had just genuinely gone into our online banking that weekend, and I think the amount caught him off guard. And it was one of those things of I probably hadn't pre-positioned with him or set any expectation around how much this would cost. And in his mind, he's probably thinking, oh, this might be a $200 expense. And then when it ends up being an $800 expense, he's like, holy moly. And so that also plays into it as well, right? Because you're like, different people have different expectations. And also, you know, when I think of things that he invests in himself for, those types of activities and stuff that he does might cost a different amount to what I want to do. And it's like, then how do you balance that out as well? And, you know, just circling back to this really comes back to making sure that you have good communication and being on the same page. And, you know, if it's important to you, standing your ground and telling your partner that this is important to me and this is why, and I want to spend this money on this, getting them on board.
Definitely.
Take them on the
journey.
journey.
Have you ever had any kind of experiences where you've been afraid to tell Luke about something that you bought?
Not afraid. I have one very distinct experience when it was early on in our relationship and we didn't have combined, kind of very similar to say where you and Ollie are now, where we didn't have combined finances, but we certainly had combined goals and we were relatively open with our finances with each other. And I was actually on holidays with some girlfriends overseas. We were in Europe and Luke was at home in Australia. So I already had a leg up there. I was like living my best life, enjoying my holiday. And I wanted to buy a handbag. And he really kindly had gifted me, because we were also away over Christmas, he'd bought me for Christmas a voucher to a shopping mall in Paris, which was like just amazing. I was stoked about it. And it was a super generous gift. I think from memory, it was like $400 voucher. So I was like, this is so good. And then anyway, little did he know that I had a full intention of not buying a $400 handbag, but buying a $2,000 handbag at said store. And so when I got there, I was going to use the voucher and then had saved up the rest of the money to contribute myself. But I felt quite, I think, you know, as you just said, like a little bit conflicted about it because that's money that I would otherwise put towards our joint goals of wanting to invest and save for a house and all that sort of thing. And so whilst I was there deliberating whether or not I wanted to spend it, I text him and said, I'm thinking about buying this handbag and it's like a lot more than the voucher that you gave me, because just, you know, prefacing with him that he thinks I'm going to come home with a $400 handbag and I'm not. So, and I was like, I just don't know if I should buy it. And he responded pretty quickly. And at the time, we were both very much into cycling and triathlon. So we also were very okay with spending a lot of money on our health and fitness and both had, you know, relatively expensive bikes and stuff like that. And he goes, how often would you use this handbag? And I'm like, pretty much every day. And he was like, is it as much as I would spend on a bike? And I was like, maybe. It's kind of like maybe a bike would be a bit more expensive, but kind of on par. And he was like, you can keep that handbag and use it every day for the rest of your life. And I guarantee you'll get more enjoyment out of it than I would spending that amount of money on a bike that I'd use, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And he's like, and I wouldn't think twice about buying a bike because it's something that I enjoy and it gives me, other benefits around my health and all this sort of stuff. So he was like, 100% you should buy the bag. And that was great because I was like, that was all, I guess, the confirmation I needed. But that conversation obviously could have gone an entirely different way. And I had really built it up in my head to panic and think like, oh gosh, he's going to tell me that I'm an absolute nutcase buying a $2,000 handbag and it's so ridiculous and rah, rah. And so that I think has kind of always just been our general starting point for these discussions, if that makes sense. And so I feel now very confident that whilst we value spending money on different things. As an example, he, right now in the stage of his life wants to spend a lot of money on tools. He's a part-time handyman. He loves doing that. And tools aren't cheap. He loves, the other day he was like, I want to buy a drop saw. It's going to be $1,800 or however much it is. And now we just have, I think when the other person wants something like that, we just have very open conversations about it. And it's very much a kind of like, okay, that's important to you. I'm not going to question it because you've brought it up with me. So I'm just going to acknowledge in the first instance that that's generally something that you've thought through. And the fact that you've now brought it up with me means that it's important enough to you to buy that thing. So who am I to sit here and question that, right? And then then the conversation just turns to, okay, well, how are we going to do this? Where, and I usually, whoever's the person that's brought it up is usually the question. I guess the question goes back to them. It's like, okay, well, you want this thing. How do you envision we're going to do this? Have you thought about, is it coming out of our savings? And then it's kind of a trade-off discussion. Or is it you're going to do some extra work and that money, rather than going to our savings, is going to go to this expense? So it's more kind of, I guess, a practical conversation and just having that level of respect to the other person that it's, I do believe like if they've got the guts to really think it through and then bring it up with you, it's like it's important to them. Why question that?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love that, Luke. Good job.
We'll
Good
continue
response.
to buy handbags forever and a day. I mean, look, I will also put out there that then in the course of our relationship, I've only ever bought 2 like what I would deem expensive handbags, but I love them and they bring me so much happiness. And he's so like supportive of that. And then to just put it in context for the good people of the pod, he has 4 bikes. So I'm like, hey.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're on par. It's all balancing out.
So good.
But yes, what I wanted to just end on and wrap up the show today with was, if you are now in the position to, I guess, be changing your mindset and be really confident with investing in yourself, and this is something you want to prioritize, do we have some practical suggestions, CJ, on, how do people work this into their budget, or what are some ways that they can start to save for the monetary side of these types of goals?
Yes. So I'm going to start with viewing our body, mind, and lifestyle as funds. So yeah, really that mindset piece around how we think about these things, firstly, and then building, perhaps you have a body, mind, and lifestyle kind of bank account or something that you regularly contribute to every time you get paid. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, and then maybe you save it up over time to then splash out on that $800 thing or whatever it is. But yeah, so to clarify, we categorize body as your physical health. So that could be things like yoga or F45 or whatever it is. Mind would be knowledge and mental health. So that would be things like personal development and then therapy, or, if you want to do another course through work or it's a business mentor, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then lifestyle is just being okay to spend money on the things that you genuinely enjoy. So the things that you align with and love having in the way that you approach life, really. Yeah. So, yeah, what else can you do, Kat?
Love this. So I think it's a great suggestion to build all of those categories into your budget, and whether or not you want to combine them, you may not also have all 3. You might only just be focusing on 1 or 2 at the moment, and that's totally okay. The other thing that just, I guess, to kind of expand on that would be thinking about having a sinking fund, and we have talked about sinking funds in the past, but essentially what they are is in the same way that you would contribute regularly to, say, paying off a credit card or paying off debt, you pay a regular amount into a sinking fund, usually in line with your pay. So let's say every fortnight, to get yourself to a goal. So let's say you've determined that you have a $1,000 expense that you want to, or I should reframe that, a $1,000 investment that you want to invest in yourself. And let's say it's something that you want to do in 3 months' time. You calculate how many pay days there will be before you need that money. And then basically you take the $1,000 divided by the number of pay days, and you set up an automatic payment every payday to go into that account for that thing. And then once it's hit the $1,000, you've got the money and ability to go and spend on that. So that, I guess, is just more of a practical way to think about how to set it up if there's a specific amount or specific goal that you have in mind. Whereas what, Christine, you've kind of mentioned is like just build it into your budget so that you've got an ongoing amount of cash flow there readily available for when you do have an expense pop up or something that happens that you think, yes, here's this opportunity. I do want to go and get a massage. I do want to go and buy this thing, and I've got some money there available for that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
Awesome. Love this topic so much. Definitely need to think about building in my mind, body, and lifestyle categories into my budget. My planned spending, I should say.
Yeah, me too.
But I do really think that this is, a great topic, and certainly something that is worthwhile everyone thinking about. And I would encourage everyone to go and do the $100 challenge, particularly whilst we are, well, at least in New Zealand, still in various states of lockdown, because it's a really good time to think about what would I actually value spending money on myself for, what are the types of things that are important to me, and just thinking through that, whether you do it or not. It's a great test of finding out how cheap you are, because that's the other thing. It's, it really makes you feel good. Well, think about feeling good about spending money on yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just add to that and say it's a great time to look at what you're not missing spending things on. So for me, I don't actually value brunching out that much. I think I'd rather coffees out. So I'd rather reallocate that budget to, I don't know, yoga or something like that.
That is such a good point. I love that.
Yes.
Hope everyone has a fabulous week. If you would like to find out more about today's episode, we have linked to heaps of great notes, particularly the video around the $100 challenge, more information about how to set up a sinking fund, and a few other resources over on the website. So you can head to itsnosecret.co.nz/19 and check out everything there. See you next Tuesday, guys.